Morning, Amanda. Long time no see. How are you? I hope you're well. Hey, Roxy. You're getting better. That's good. That's good. How are all the children? All of the children. Are they all good too? I'm making my coffee. Actually, right now I'm making my husband's coffee, but I will be making my coffee here momentarily. It's going to be good. All good things. It's the end of this box, which is sad because this is good. All right, let's put these away. Hey Steph, how are you and baby E? What are you guys doing? Chilling, having a good time? Anyone have any fun plans for the weekend? Anybody? Anybody have fun plans? Alright, I'm gonna go bring this coffee to my husband and I will be right back. My hair is insane. We just did stretches and it's screaming time. Sure. Does Aunt Sasha's voice calm us down at all, or this is just too much for that? Which I would understand, but maybe we'll chill. Hello! Hi Jen, how are you? Feeling good, feeling fine? Any fun plans this weekend? Anybody? Anything fun going on? I need to descald the machine again, which, you know, is not surprising given the amount of coffee we drink in this household. Just is what it is. It's whatever. Hey Jillian. Doing great, going to a friend's birthday party tomorrow. My daughter is also going to her friend's birthday party tomorrow. Of course, we are accompanying her, but it is another first birthday party. When you have a baby that's turning 1, you find that all the babies are turning 1. So we're going to a lot of birthday parties right now because there's a lot of babies turning 1. All the 1-year-olds. All right, let's settle in. Let's do some quiet reading before we lose our opportunity. However, I do need really quickly to buy wipes. And you know, we like to double dip and purchase them from the live so that, all right, let's just buy these wipes because we need them. Yes, I need the whole thing. Yes, 720. Let's go. Ordered. Boom. This is the cheapest way to get these wipes, so I have to do it. And I put it there for me, and it is what it is. And now I'm gonna put the book back. Anytime I want something, I'm just like, buy it through the live. Get it cheap. Whatever. 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 All right, a couple more sips of coffee. And then we will resume our reading. Boom, boom, boom. All right, where are we? We are on page 84. Might as well, exactly. I had to buy it anyway, so we're down to our last two packs of wipes in my back stock, and I don't like to get that low on wipes. I need wipes to be in large quantities in our home because I just do. It's just what it's about. Okay, so yes, page 84, and last we were with Miss Emily Wilde, and she was with her fairy friend, asking questions about Bambly, because Bambly went to meet the little fairy, and the little fairy's like, he's a prince. And she's like, I had my suspicions, but I didn't know. And so she's gonna ask more questions now, I'm sure. So let's find out. The fairy was almost sitting in my lap now, his long fingers curled possessively about my cloak.
There are no doors here in this forest. I've never seen one. Maybe the doors move with the high ones and the snow. Maybe they carry them hither and thither as the wind blows down from the north. He frowned. They'll be here soon.
My hands tightened on the grass. How did my friend react to that information?
I don't know. He left after, but I'm glad he's gone.
As the brownie seemed distressed, I reminded him of the chocolates that I had given him, and in truth, my kindness was partly out of concern for my cloak, now striped with holes from Poe's touch, as well as the leg underneath it. He hastened to check on his little hoard and then disappeared into the forest, returning with a loaf of bread still warm to the touch. He seemed calmed by the ritual and by my appreciation of him. I promised to return on the morrow alone. Hey! I spent the next hour wandering the forest, and I told myself that I was conducting a survey of the possible fairy paths that I had noted during previous wanderings, but in truth, I needed a walk. What on earth was I to make of this revelation regarding Bambly? Not all folk have grand designs in their interaction with mortals, and I have come to think of him as an aristocratic dilettante. And yet, did he have other reasons for cultivating a career chasing stories of his kindred? More important... Oh, we need water. More important, did it matter? I had my book to worry about, a book that could make my career, and why should I care about Bambly's intentions, provided that he didn't get in my way anyway? I was distantly aware that most people would have a different reaction to the discovery of a fairy prince in their midst, but I paid little heed to this. Shadow went before me, his head sniffing at a jumble of mushrooms. Upon consulting my map, I noted that these seemed to have moved from their previous locations some yards away. Now, it is possible that they were formed during the most recent deluge, but I thought not. They had a shape about them that my trained eye recognized, something twisted from its natural pattern and purpose. Do you need help? Okay. Perhaps it was a gathering place. Hey, Susan, we're just one page in, so you're fine. Yeah, so don't stress, Susan. We're just, she's just talking to the fairy that she was talking to yesterday, so you are all good. And now, well, she was talking to him. Now she's kind of walking around, like, debating it all. Ah. Oh, thank you. That's very kind of you, now that there's noise out there that is uncommonly loud.
Very loud.
Very loud. Too loud, some say. All say. Why are they so loud, do you think, out there? We were talking about that last night. Like, we don't even live in, like, the city. Like, we live in Los Angeles, but we don't even live in, like the part of the city where you'd expect that. I lived in New York City, and it wasn't even this loud at this hour. It's crazy. Anyway, let's keep going. I grew calmer as I sank into my work, and the next few miles passed pleasantly enough. If anyone were to claim greater happiness in their career than I do poking about the sunlit wild woods for fairy footprints, I should not believe it. Shadow suddenly surged ahead, his tail flashing amongst the thinning undergrowth. I followed him into a clearing where I found slumped against a tree in the sunshine with his long legs stretched out before him and his hat drawn over his face, none other than Bambly. He seemed to have found the greenest part of the forest, which had little greenery left, and a small grove of conifers. He did not awaken from his nap when Shadow flopped down beside him, but he did when I kicked the tree, which showered him with a rain of needles. "Is that all you ever do?" I demanded. "Dear Emily," he said, stretching like a cat and rubbing Shadow's ears. "How was your day?" "Delightful." As he showed no evidence of bestirring himself, I grudgingly seated myself on the grass. Our friend in the village has no white, but a changeling of the courtly fae, and I had to interrogate the creature with iron, unassisted. "Hey, Tiffany." "I'm sure you held your own, as you always do." And then the hat slid back down his forehead. I took it from him, and he blinked at the sudden sunlight. "Oh dear, what have I done to earn the basilisk stare?" "We have agreed to work together, yet now I hear that you have seen fit to trample on my research. The brownie by the spring, whose trust I have spent days in cultivating, would barely speak to me after your visit." "Hey, Ray." "What?" He looked genuinely baffled. "I brought the little one peppermints, and I just asked a few questions, nothing more." To anyone just joining, we're just one page in, so you're all good. "Well, he seemed frightened of you," I quickly added, though he wouldn't say why. "In any case, you can't go there again." "Your wish is my command, Em." He regarded me with amusement. "Is that all that's upset you? Surely there are other brownies in this woods for you to pester if that one has soured on you." I thought quickly, hiding it behind a frown. It had become clear to me in the way that it never had before that it would be wise for me to be frightened of Bambly, and if I could not muster fear, a dubious position to be sure, I should at least attempt wariness with him, if for no other reason than he is folk. My suspicion is suspicion no more, but fact. "You have done nothing since your arrival but laze about," I told him, "as well as jeopardize the only meaningful connection that I've established with the Hidden Ones. You don't realize how hard I've been working, Wendell, or how important this is to me." "I do, though," he said, and I was alarmed by how earnest he became. "And I'm sorry, Em, if I've given you reason to think otherwise. I assure you that I've been working quite hard today." He looked down at the sprawled self of his. "More or less, I walked a great deal of the Coruscant. I've even discovered a small lake high up on the mountain with evidence of Kelpie habitation. Well, whatever they call such creatures in this blasted cold country." "Kelpie?" My mouth fell open. "What lake? I saw no lakes." He looked far too pleased with himself now. "That's because you missed it, my dear. It was about half a mile beyond the extent of your map." "Show me." He groaned. "Oh, but I just came from there. You're far too vigorous for a scholar. Another day, please. Why don't you tell me about your interview with your new changeling friend?" He was changing the subject, but I admit I had little energy for climbing up peaks after the day I'd had, so I gave him a summary of my interrogation at the farmhouse. "He's terrorized them, Wendell," I concluded. "So it seems," he said, although he did not appear particularly interested. "And he would tell you nothing of his parents?" I shook my head. "The motives of the courtly fae in stealing children have never left the realm of academic speculation. If only we could ask one of them." "Yes, wouldn't that be nice?" he said blandly, and I gritted my teeth. "Otherwise, I don't know how we'll ever find the purpose for this instance." "Purpose or purposes. The folk are diverse in many ways, no doubt, as this one is." I could detect no hidden meaning in his words, and so I decided to take them at face value. Perhaps he truly had no idea why the folk of Lostland stole children. Indeed, he was so detached from the whole thing that I felt a sliver of doubt enter me. Yet what reason would Poe have to lie about Bambly's identity? "I would like to at least try to help." Oh, sorry, that was her. "I'd like to at least try to help." "Help whom?" I wanted to shake him now. "Mord, an Oslag!" "Ah, well, how do you even propose to do that? The sun will die if the changeling is killed. If we somehow chase it from its abode, it will die, and thus the outcome is the same. Besides," he leaned back against the tree, his eyes drifting shut again, "it would be hardly professional. You're here to observe, not to interfere." And I watched him carefully. "Well, then perhaps you could visit them." His eyes opened to slits. "And what would that accomplish?" His voice was bored as ever, but as was the there was an undercurrent of something that made me feel as if I was edging onto dangerous ground. Only I didn't care. I knew that if I left Morden Oslag with the changeling without ever making an effort to free them from its poisons, I would regret it until the end of my days. I don't know, I said, meeting his gaze levelly. It was true enough. I don't know what powers he has or what he's capable of. But perhaps you could get more information out of the creature than I could. The folk of Lostland clearly find you disagreeable company for reasons unimaginable to myself. He laughed, his eyes becoming very green when he laughs. You wonder if the color will split from them like sap. I hardly recognize you, Em. I would never have thought you, of all people, would come to care for any of these villagers. Are there not mere variables in your research? It's not that I care for them, I said hesitantly, before realizing that my offense rather made his point for him. I could tell by his smile that he knew it too. I will pay your afflicted horticulturists a visit tomorrow, he said. Will that suit? Thank you. I stood, feeling off balance and wishing to escape the conversation. Perhaps we can return to the cottage. I'd like to review your notes and hear what your students have discovered. Very well. He looked at me woefully as if expecting me to help him up, but I folded my arms. With a dramatic groan, he pulled himself to his feet with a customary grace, and we departed the Karaskar. Hey, Lori, how are you? All right. We have hit the 30th of October. Do you think they celebrate Halloween? Probably not, right? I don't know, but we're going to find out together. 30th October. Bambley insisted on a visit to the tavern last night. Naturally, a diversement eminently acceptable to our two assistants who were weary from their work in the field. Lizzie and Henley, both attractive if bland ambassadors of the scientific community, were warmly welcomed by the rustics and the gentry alike and bonded quickly with the village youth over their enthusiasm to sample the local wallop. Bambley, of course, was in his element. With a speed that I suspected to be record-setting even in his book, he soon had half the tavern roaring with laughter over one of his many stories, a foreign misadventure, delivering charmingly in an accent of Lostlander, whilst the other half gossiped about him at a distance, including several ladies who I overheard scheming over private investigations of a decidedly unacademic nature. Hey, Sloth. The result was easily the most enjoyable evening that I've spent in Hrafsnik, as the villagers largely forgot about my existence amidst the gale-force winds of Bambley's personality. Relatable content. She's like, peace at last, they're ignoring me. I was delighted to sit in a corner with my food and a book and speak to no one. My God, what a delight. Bambley seemed particularly drawn to the beautiful woodcutter Lila, and spent a good portion of the evening, when he was not occupied by his proverbial hour on the stage, wooing her by the fireside. I'm afraid that my one source of enjoyment was in the continued politeness with which she received his attentions, which never warmed beyond tepid. It seemed that Bambley had never encountered such a result before, given the puzzlement of his gaze, which kept straying in Lila's direction from across the room. This, too, was met with an amiable wall of obliviousness from her. That's funny. The only person to converse with me was Thora Gorisdottir, who heaved herself into the other chair at the corner of the table. Not too much for entertainment, eh? She said, and I gestured to the academic tome in my hands. This is much more entertaining than stories I've been subject to more than once. What a cold fish you are. Unlike Finn, Thora did not appear to mean that as an insult. Not one to be charmed by a pretty face, eh? What on earth are you reading? I explained that it was the treatise on Russian forest fairies, the Lishi, whom some scholars theorize to be the cousins of the Hidden Ones in Lostland, those inclined to entertain the idea that the Hidden Ones even exist. Thora seemed intrigued, and she asked many questions. May I borrow it? She said. Of course, I said with some surprise, and I handed her the book. Perhaps after you've read it, you could offer your opinion on the merits of Wilkie's theory. She snorted, thumbing through the pages. I don't need to read it to know that it's nonsense. There's none like our snow dwellers, ne'er in this world or the next. I blinked. Have you encountered the folk? I've encountered them. That's enough. Have you? So I was filled with questions that I could not work out which to utter first. She seemed to recognize this, and she gave a snort. I will not speak of them here, she said, nor should I speak of them anywhere this close to winter. But if you visit my house upon a midday when the sun shines and the wind is fair, I will answer your questions. or those that I have answers for. To this I eagerly agreed, and she went back to the book, occasionally blowing air through her nose in sharp bursts, although her gaze often strayed over to Bambley. I inquired as to whether she wished to move closer so she could hear his stories. No, I prefer to enjoy the view, she said with a cackle that I couldn't help but smile at. She motioned to Shadow, who was curled up beneath my feet at the table. At my feet beneath the table, my apologies. His large black eyes tracking the currents of the gathering, but always returning to me, regular as clockwork. That's quite a singular dog. Had him long? Yes, some years now, I said, and Thora asked a number of questions about Shadow, and I told her the tale that I'd invented of our meeting, which I try not to vary. It's easier, I found, to have only one story to remember. You know what Judge Judy says, you guys, right? If you tell the truth, you don't have to have a good memory. It's one of my favorite lines of Judge Judy's, but it's the truth, and it's one that I will impart upon my daughter as she ages. You're not going to have to remember your stories if you just tell the truth. I must have enjoyed myself at the tavern, for I slept a full half-hour later than habit the following morning, and when I rose I found the cottage was empty and Shadow was dozing contentedly by the fireside, already having been fed by his breakfast. Bambley's cloak was gone, as were those of his students, and the remains of their breakfast was scattered upon the table. I was astonished. Had my lecture actually penetrated Bambley's head, or was he off interrogating the common fae about the fairy doors again? Either way, I was happy to have a few moments of peace, and I settled myself at the table with my notes and a cup of tea. Bambley's door then swung open, and I nearly jumped out of my skin. A freckled, red-headed young woman poked her head out. "Oh," she tittered, adjusting the sheet wrapped around her. "I thought I was alone." "As did I." She seemed to take no notice of my tone, but she slunk away smiling into the main room, mischief on her face that she seemed to imagine I would take part in. "Did he leave?" "Miraculously, yes." The girl, one of Thora's many granddaughters, I believe, settled herself, sheet and all, opposite me at the table, indolently helping herself to the remains of the breakfast. She proceeded to question me about Bambley's past, particularly in reference to his dalliances, a subject on which I could have spoken volumes had I elected to take leave of my senses. I replied with an answer so staccato that she began to smirk at me, imagining me jilted or jealous, or both. Thankfully, Shadow frightened her when he patted upon the table, hoping for scraps, and then she exited the cottage shortly thereafter. Well, the morning was gray and windy, with intervals of sleet, as miserable a face as the sky can put on, so I ventured only as far as the spring for my now habitual visit with Poe. I spent the remainder of the morning with my notes and Bambley's, which were exactly as cursory as I had expected them to be. Patches of blue sky appeared around noon, and so I donned my hat and my coat, and I packed my camera, intending to venture upon the mountain to hunt for Bambley's supposed kelpie, which Thor had informed me was known as Nykur in Lostland. I was just stepping through the door, however, as Bambley came striding up the path, collar notably askew, looking put out. He startled a little at the sight of me, and then looked guiltily away. "What has happened?" I said, already dreading the response. "And where on earth have you been?" "It seems I must reside in the field," he said. "I displease you when I sleep late. I displease you when I rise early. I displease you when I do exactly what you tell me to do. When you tell me to do it, I cannot win with you, Em." "Oh, yes, that's enough of that." I narrowed my eyes. "You visited the changeling." "Indeed, though I'm afraid I could get little information from him, and that's because he has none to give. He does not know when his parents will return, nor why they abandoned him here." I scanned the path as he strode past me into the cottage. "And where are our assistants?" "I thought it best to leave them at the tavern with their pockets full of coin." I didn't like his tone one bit. "And what's the cause of this munificence on your part?" He took his time in answering, using Shadow as an excuse as he greeted the dog with lavish displays of affection. "I brought them along to the farmstead." "Oh, God." I stared at him. "Why would you do such a thing? That's not a creature to be dealt with by amateurs." "I am responsible for their education. An opportunity to study a changeling in person is an invaluable one to a budding scholar. Besides, you made it sound as if the creature was nearly harmless, Em. I never said that word. If you think, well, you implied it. You mastered that thing with a bit of iron. You're every inch as fearsome as I always supposed you would be. Well, Iron was less important than the knowledge of the ways of the folk, gleaned through extensive reading and experience in the field, and such understanding has taken years. He gave me a look that I found difficult to interpret. Had I known what that changeling was, the powers it possesses, I would not have let you go there alone. I'm a better friend to you than that. I didn't need your help, I snapped. I handled the situation adequately. And he pressed his hands to his face. Yesterday you were angry at my lack of assistance. Today you bite my head off for helping. You are the most contrary person that I have ever known. That took the wind out of me. Being labeled contrary by Wendell Bambley would stop any sensible person in her tracks. I suppose I should have been more forthcoming, I said grudgingly as I sat down at the table. Well, what do we need to do? I don't know. He sat opposite me, drawing one knee up and resting his arm on it. With his other hand, he spun one of the empty teacups. I don't know what visions the creature showed them. I only know that they were ghastly, given their reactions. Yet they both seemed calmer with some food and wine. I shall give it off tomorrow. Good morning, Naisa. I felt a niggle of guilt. A niggle? Have you ever had that word before? I've never heard that word before, ever. I suppose I should have mentioned, I said, that I didn't leave the creature in the best of moods yesterday. He tilted his head at me, look of wordless exasperation on his face. And what visions did it show you? Oh, sorry, that was her. And what visions did it show you? I said, and tried to redirect his attention. Oh, it doesn't matter. Cold and icy, bloody wolves howling away. The teacup rattled against the table as he spun it. Suffice to say that I've met with much worse folk than that brat. Maud and Oslog seemed disappointed that you did not accompany me today. Did you realize that you were capable of inspiring affection from others? Only narcissists and layabouts, I thought. He leaned back, a smile playing on his mouth. You know, Em, you could make life so much easier for yourself if you tried to be liked once in a while. I do try, I said, over loud. His words stung more than he would have guessed. I tried and tried, or at least I used to try, and nothing ever came of it. Well, either way, you've outdone yourself this time. How you've convinced almost an entire village to hate you in the span of a week is beyond me. It will not make our research here easier, given the necessity of talking to said villagers. I gave a wordless sound of frustration, running a hand through my hair and dislodging yet more of it from its tie. He was right. I hated it. I did nothing to set them against me, only somehow I offended Odd, and it seems the others are all offended on her behalf. Tell me, he said, using his knee to push a chair back onto its legs. Scowling, I gave him an account of my ill-fated visit to the tavern, and by the time I was through, he was wincing and shaking his head. Oh, Em, he said. Em, did you do no research at all before coming here? Now that he called me... No research? What do you... I don't mean on the hidden ones. I've no doubt that you scoured all of Cambridge for every passing reference to them. I can picture you terrorizing poor librarians now. No, I was referencing the mortal inhabitants of this delightful winter wasteland. He flicked open his satchel and pulled a book out, which he tossed to me. What is this? It appeared to be written in Lostlander. Oh, sorry, what is this? That was her asking. A novel, he said, and he pulled out another book, which I barely caught. On the smutty side, I'm afraid, not to your taste at all. That one's an account of a very dull trade war here. He pulled out a third book, also in Lostlander, and a biologic... Why can't I read? I all of a sudden lost all sense of how to read words. A biography of their last queen. That's not a bad one. She shot one of her suitors in the foot. By accident, of course. I folded my arms. Thank you, but you needn't go on. I understand what you're saying. Do you? Can you even read Lostlander? Well enough to get by, I lied, for I had no intention of listening to him brag. Bambley is irritatingly adept at languages. Small wonder the folk can speak any mortal language that they encounter. As they flit through the physical barriers erected by mortals, so too do they evade those of our cultures. Hospitality is important to these people, he said. You'd know that if you bothered to learn anything about them at all. You offended Odd by insisting on paying for your supper. My mouth fell open. That's it? That's why she hates me? He sighed. Perhaps if you were not so covered in prickles, she would have forgiven you by now, but there is anyone who could encounter others going on looking for excuses of taking offense, it is you. And then you compounded this mistake by barging into her village with your questions without seeking her permission first. I can't believe the villagers require her permission to speak to me. Hey, Amanda. Of course they don't require it, but you should have sought it regardless. I put my head in my hands. Bambly was right, damn him. Okay, well, what are we gonna do? You are going to have to allow her to be kind to you, he said, to welcome you as a guest, and to do so in such a way that she will not simply assume that I told you what to do. I have absolutely no idea how to achieve that, I know. He thunked his chair down and gave me a considering look. I didn't say that I wouldn't help you, only that we must not let on to odd. We must work through this before we go much further into our research. The villagers were evasive with me last night whenever the subject turned to the hidden ones. My friendship with you means that I will not get much from them either. I groaned. Can't you charm them into giving you what you want like you usually do? Probably, but that will take time. Do we have time to waste? As you are so fond of reminding me, we only have a few weeks. I stared at my hands. Thor would speak to me, but I couldn't base my research on the testimony of one single person. I have always hated that sort of thing. I would sooner interview a dozen bloody changelings than navigate my way through a thicket of social conventions. I thought to myself that perhaps I should simply avoid conversation altogether going forward, seeing as I always make a mess of it. My dear Emily, I've never seen you look so dejected. He was regarding me with affection and something else, but it was gone before I could name it. Why don't we go for a stroll? You can entertain me with your list of demands, and then I can find a nice place to nap whilst you hunt for common fate to harass. I wish to see the lake. I said it, already on my feet. I wanted more than anything to put this conversation from my mind. You said you found a footpath? He groaned a little at that, but I was already out the door, so he donned his coat and he followed. Oh boy. She's offended the whole town. It's not good, you guys. It's not good. You know what is good, though? Coffee. We're almost to page 100 for everyone who's keeping track, which is awesome. It's just barely over 300 pages, so we're almost a third of the way through the book, which is nice. We're just clipping along pretty nicely here. 31st October. I arose to darkness and silence. Bambly's enthusiasm for rising early, it seemed, was short-lived. Well, fine. I shall have plenty of quiet to write in my journal. I've just opened the shutters, a landscape of white and shadows gazing back at me as I pen these words. Bambly and I made it to the lake yesterday after a steep climb. It was one of those scenes that froze me in place, a cup of velvety blue between two towers of rock. At our backs was the ferocious... That's not the word that's there. It says furious. Furious Arctic Sea, thick with ice, too much of it visible from that height. Too much rather summed up this place, I thought, as I hurried after Bambly, who, apart from giving the volcanic stones scattered here and there a few desultory kicks, seemed barely conscious of the feral nature of these surroundings. The wind yanked on my bun and sent loose strands lashing against my face. Though we found only tenuous evidence of the Nicor, misshapen prints frozen in the muck of the water's edge, which I photographed, I returned with my spirits much improved. As Finn had informed us that the weather was changing, evidenced by the looming clouds upon the horizon, I was determined to make the most of the sun and set off on another survey of the eastern peaks, whilst Bambly, despite lacking any visible sign of fatigue, pleaded exhaustion, and he returned to the cottage. Solivant, I misjudged... I don't know this word. We're learning so many new words in this book, you guys. It's Solivant. Solivant. I have no idea. It's not a word from another language. It's because she always puts those, like, they're written differently so that I know when they're in another language. This must be English. I have no idea what it is. Anyway, I misjudged the distance and I returned in the dark. The stars, a thick glittering above me like a spill of treasure. I could not help but pause to stargaze, a pastime that I indulge in but rarely in Cambridge, the nights there being blurred by the gaslight and hemmed by trees and towers. By the time I clambered up the mountain path to the cottage, our students had returned from their sojourn at the pub, rather worse for the wear, and gone off to bed to sleep things off, a solitary wander. There you go. See, we learned something new. I hardly recognized the cottage, whereupon I stepped in from the windy night. A fire merrily cracked. The whole space was illuminated by strategically placed oil lamps that had not been present there before. Woolen rugs were scattered on the floor, and the windows were hung with curtains. And there were things atop the mantel, pretty things that seemed to have no purpose at all. I recognized one of them from Bambley's office, a little jeweled mirror that flashed merrily in the firelight, but others seemed to be artifacts of Hrafsnik, including a Madonna carved from whalebone and a little seascape painted on a scrap of driftwood. Bambley himself was seated at the fire, mending a curtain. He explained to me that he had borrowed most of these furnishings from Christian, including the curtain that he was presently repairing, which he thought to be strung up in the kitchen. I hardly heard any of it through my amazement. "You're darning curtains? You?" "My family has a talent for needlework," he said merely, his fingers moving with improbable deftness. I informed him that the cottage had been perfectly satisfactory as it was, to which he replied that the place had been so dank and cheerless that it was suitable only to bats and unsociable gargoyles brooding over their books. He would sooner put his eyes out than endure weeks of such wretched environs. I contemplated unleashing Shadow and his muddy paws upon Bambley's efforts, but the truth was, even I could see that our humble abode was much improved, with a sense not only of warmth but safety, an enveloping coziness whose source I could not wholly put a finger on. I settled for brooding over my books for the remainder of the evening, ignoring him completely, which he hated above all else. I'm afraid that since writing that last, things have turned upside down. Finn was late with breakfast, which did not alarm me at first, given the conditions. I pulled the chair up to the window and watched the snow fall as I brewed tea. I had not forgotten my promise to Poe, and did not look forward to plunging into the drifts, though I estimated the snowfall was less than a foot. As I sat, a sort of inexplicable dread grew within me, a sense that I was the only person for miles about. So I stood abruptly and threw open Bambley's door, banging it against the wall. From the bed came a sort of confused mumbling. There was a flash of golden hair, and yet my relief was fleeting, as I was already stamping down the hall when Bambley croaked, What the bloody hell? So livagant. Yes, so livagant. The students' room was empty, and I had known it would be somehow. Not that, but their trunks were gone, their cloaks. I stormed back to Bambley's room, banging around the door again, and flung back the curtains. "Good God," he muttered from his pillows. "Is this your manner of setting an alarm? I'm asking Christian to install a lock." "They're gone." "What?" Moments later, there came a knock at the door. Bambley answered it. Having roused himself at last, I knew it wouldn't be them, and it wasn't. Finn's worried gaze came back at us. "Thank God," he said. "There are rumors about that you set off this morning in Bjorn Gudmundsson's boat for Lebord. It's rough weather for sailing." I exchanged a look with Bambley. "The rumors are half true. Our students seem to have absconded. But what on earth are their plans in Lullabear?" Finn shifted his weight, looking guiltily. "From Lullabear are merchant ships to London that depart every day. Perhaps they've a mind to board one." Bambley gave him a look. "Perhaps." "I may have heard them discussing it with Bjorn yesterday in the tavern," Finn said, adding quickly, "I had no idea they intended to leave today." "Thank you, Finn," I said grimly, and we took our breakfast from him, bread and cheese only this morning. He hadn't had time for anything else, with the burden of the storm added to his chores. Several sheep were missing, it seemed, and the weight of the snow had caused the roof of the outbuilding to collapse. Bambley paced back and forth while I calmed somewhat. He seemed to grow more and more agitated, though. "This is a fine thing, and we're nearly out of wood." I trust him to be concerned with his own comfort when the students are at that very moment possibly drowning in an icy sea. I said as much, and he waved his hand. "I met Bjorn. He's a man who knows his business. They wouldn't have taken them on a suicide mission." I watched him for a moment. I don't believe I've ever seen him so unraveled. "Have you ever traveled abroad without servants? Students?" He narrowed his eyes at me. "There's never been a need to." "I see. If I hadn't been worried about our research, I might have been enjoying myself now. Well, what are we going to do? We have limited time, and now we're without our assistants to help with the data gathering." "I'm sure we'll muddle through," he said distractedly. I could tell he wasn't worried one whit about the data gathering. Well, why would he be, if he was so used to fabricating said data? No, he was wondering who was going to prepare his tea and wash his laundry. "We will have to roll up our sleeves from now on," I said, placing a heavy emphasis on the first word, we. Bambley collapsed into one of the armchairs, looking faint. There was no water left for washing up after breakfast, so I donned my boots and trampled outside to the stream. The snow had ceased, and the sky was a soft eggshell color, the mountains dreaming under their woolen blankets. There was a loveliness to the forest's absence of color, its haunted dark, framed by gray-white boughs, as if the snowfall had winnowed into downing the essence of what a forest is. My sense of peace was short-lived, however. The stream was covered in ice too thick to pierce. I slipped, trying to cover myself in the snow. In a burst of inspiration, I filled the pot with snow and then set it over the fire. Bambley was outside by the woodshed, looking like he was trying to solve some mathematical equation. For some reason, he had pushed away the snow with his boots so that he could stand up on the frosty grass. I actually felt a little sorry for him, shivering despite the weight of his cloak, for he reminded me of some temperate tree or bush transplanted and forced to grow in some northerner's garden against his will. I hefted the axe and placed it upon the stump. "Perhaps we should send Fuff in," Bambley said. "I'm perfectly capable," I replied, although the axe was of an unnerving Losslander design and nearly came up to my shoulders. I swung. The dull blade glanced off the log, which went careening into the tree. Dislodging a small avalanche of snow, my axe buried itself into the stump, and unbalanced, I fell over. He looked appalled. "Good God, what a violent process." I dragged myself to my feet, cheeks flaming as I brushed the snow from my backside. "It's not supposed to go like that." "I won't be helping." He backed up a step and raised his elegant hand. "I'll cut my foot off, or you will." "Oh, come on." I wasn't looking forward to trying a second time, and in my anger I couldn't help but baiting a fairy prince, an unfortunate habit that I've fallen into. "Do you not heat your house with wood?" I said, all innocence. "In the place that you come from? Hey, Liz." He gave me a withering look. "I'm quite happy to say that in Dublin we do have servants to deal with these things." "Well, this isn't Dublin, and I'm not getting anywhere. You have to help." "I do not." "Give it one of your scows and the wood will split itself in two." "Oh, it's okay. Work calls happen." God. I went to impale the axe in the ground in frustration. Unfortunately, Bambley, contrary creature that he is, had given a step forward to remove it from my possession. I directed my swing just in time to avoid relieving him of his arm, but not fast enough to save his sleeve. "Damn it!" He pressed his hand to his arm, and at first I thought it was melodrama, but then the snow beneath him began to turn pink. I knew it. "Good morning, Mary." He snapped as blood leaked through his fingers. "I knew you would be the death of me. I wish you had chosen my foot, as this is my favorite cloak." "Hang your cloak." I shoved him toward the cottage. "Get inside. You're bleeding." "I will not bleed any less indoors, you utter mad woman." But he allowed me to shove him inside, leaving behind a trail of blood like tiny red footprints. I'm on his side with this one. It's not good to cut someone's arm with an axe. Not gonna lie. It's maybe her worst thing so far. Uh-oh, go get the trash can. You shouldn't swing an axe close to anyone, even if they're not your friend. A colleague, whatever you want to call them. Don't do it. To my horror, the pot of snow that I had set over the fire had unbalanced itself during the melting and fallen onto its side, extinguishing all but a few of the embers there. "Why not, Mary? That's funny." Shadow, having been roused from his nap by the fireside, sat sneezing in the smoke. We peeled away Bambley's cloak, and we found the iron of the axe had hit a bit deep, down to the bone. A scrap of flesh hung loose like a ghastly piece of cloth. As there was no water to wash the wound, I settled for a temporary dressing using the scraps of my scarf, and by the time I finished, Bambley's arm was blood-soaked and his face was white. "Just stay there," I said. "Oh, must I? Let's head up to the fells again." Quiet. I was a storm of anxiety. The missing students, the rapidly cooling cottage, the water pot, the blood everywhere. It took me twice as long as it normally did to light the fire again, and I was forced to use the last of our logs. Yeah, it depends on the colleague. That's fair, Amanda. Then there was this business of heating more snow in the pot, which I was now in terror of overturning. I was equally concerned by the dearth of the quips from Wendell's direction. I went to examine the wound again and was alarmed to find a puddle of blood on the floor. "Why are you still bleeding?" I demanded, absurdly offended, and he let out a breath of laughter. He was resting his head upon his uninjured arm. You nearly severed my hand." I shook him. "Tell me what to do." "Oh, I have no idea." His voice was faint. "I've never been injured before. I don't care for it much." I let out a string of curses. Honestly, I have to tell you, I'm on his side at this point. I've never been injured before because I don't care for it much. Same. I let out a string of curses. My mind ran through everything I knew about Irish folk, flipping through stories like pages in a book. There was a tale of a fairy lord injured in battle who was tended to by a mortal girl, after which he turned her hair to gold, and she lived as a queen, buying herself a new house with every inch of hair as she grew. Another story of a maiden turned into a tree, which a woodcutter cut half down, only to realize his mistake, and the tree began to sob. There were plenty of stories of folk nursed back to health by mortals, but none explained how to do it. They were told because people loved hearing that the folk needed mortal aid, and they needed to be lavished with rewards after they helped them. "I need stitches, I think," he said. "Can you do it yourself?" I asked. "No." He sounded so certain that I didn't think to question him, so I tightened the scarf around him and helped him to his bed, and then I ran. I went first to Christian's door, but no one answered my frantic banging, and I was left to assume that they were off in some fold, hunting some errant sheep. And then I ran to the village, and I must have looked in utter fright when I clambered through the door of the tavern, for Aude, standing by the counter with her frowning husband, exclaimed, "My God, Emily, who did this to you?" She grabbed me by the shoulders. I was so astounded that I could only stare at her, which seemed to alarm her even more. Realizing that she was referring to the blood that was on my hands, I pulled myself together and explained the situation. Aude listened with a stillness that reminded me of the mountains. In Losslander, she finally said, "Ulfar, Thora, Lila, come with me." "Ja," Thor said, taking up her cane and drawing herself to her feet. "Eventually." I don't remember much of the walk back to the cottage. I recall Aude holding my arm and murmuring, "He'll be all right, don't worry, he will." And then we were at Wendell's bedside, and the sheets were so soaked in blood. His skin was the color of old ashes, and his eyes were closed, and his golden hair flamed bright against the pallor. Ulfar tossed herbs into the water, and Aude washed Wendell's arm. She sewed up the wound with the same steadiness as was done before Thora stomped through the door. The old woman laid her hand on Wendell's forehead and clucked her tongue. "What?" I demanded over loud. There was a ringing in my ears. "Nothing," Thora said. "You must have nicked a vein. He's lost plenty of blood, but it's no death sentence. He should recover once he gets some food in him." She gave me a wink. "He's prettier when he's asleep, eh? You don't notice that big mouth of his." She shuffled into the kitchen and began banging pots and pans. Someone must have summoned Groa, for she appeared shortly after with a basket of meat, vegetable, cheeses, and greeted me with her customary cheerful indifference. The kitchen din intensified, but Bambly still did not stir. My mind had begun to work at this point, and I remembered the tale of the prince in the Irish folk tale, held captive at the bottom of a lake by a water sprite, and the fairy princess who had liberated him with a token of the world above. I dashed out the door, even as I mentally cross-referenced the tale with the others that concerned fairy potions. Yes, this could work. Nobody ever noticed my going, apart from Lila, who was in the yard making short work of the woodpile. She slung the axe over her broad shoulder and called something after me, but I was already halfway up the mountainside. The forest was silent as I ducked beneath the boughs, holding its breath in a curious way as wilds do after a snowfall. I floundered about for a time, for the drifts were deep in place, filling my boots with snow, and there it was, a red willow, scrawny and malcontent, only tree that I was certain grew also in Ireland. I wrenched free a handful of brown leaves, and I ran back to the cottage. Bambly was alone in his room, still asleep, still pale, while the women filled the kitchen with noise. I stared from Bambly to the leaves in my hand, and suddenly I was unsure. Perhaps there was no need for my desperate remedy, but there was something in Wendell's face that made the terror churn within me again. I looked from certain angles, and he seemed to lose substance, as the changeling had done. My tangled thoughts drifted into place, and I recalled the fairy princess had brewed tea. Yes, it was tea, for the prince's weakness had come not from drowning, but from being severed from his own green world. So I filled a cup with hot water from the pot, and I took it back to Bambly's bedside, where I crumbled the leaves into it, and I held it up to his lips. There was a noise in the doorway, and I turned and I found that Aude was watching what I was doing with a queer expression on her face. "Why?" she began, as her gaze strayed to Bambley's fading in and out against the pillow, as if his edges had been suddenly blurred. I stepped between them to block her view. I don't know why I did this. Surely his secret is nothing to me. But I wasn't quick enough in any case, and Odd went still, like a deer noticing a snap of a twig. We stood frozen like that for a moment, and then her face grew hard, and I felt certain that she would flee, or perhaps she would knock the cup from my hand. But it was only in her inborn decisiveness reasserting itself. "Here," she said, stepping forward. "Not like that." And she tilted Wendell's head back, spilling his hair across the pillows. Her hand shook ever so slightly, and then she stilled. A mouthful of tea passed his lips, and then he swallowed. I was staring at her. It's not... I mean... You're clearly immortal. She didn't look up from her task. He hasn't harmed you. That's something, I suppose. He wouldn't, I said, and then I stopped. He doesn't know. That I know, I mean. She pursed her lips and said nothing for a moment. Well, isn't that perfect? I blinked, astonished to see a smile playing on her lips. They're so full of themselves, this lot, she said. They love their games and their tricks. This may be the funniest thing I've heard all year. I hardly know the man, but I've no doubt this serves him right. A burble of laughter escaped me then. Wendell was muttering something, and Odd handed the cup back to me and returned to the kitchen without another word, and she left me staring at her. I've got another mouthful of tea into him before his eyes drifted open and he shoved my arm away. He grimaced and pressed his sleeve to his mouth. Good God, what is that? Couldn't axe me to death, so you've decided to poison me? Is that it? To my horror, I just burst into tears. Bambley stared at me, and I've never seen him more astonished. Oh, Em, I fled the room then, too embarrassed to stay a second longer. I leaned against the fireplace and tried to control myself while Shadow pawed at my leg, distressed. What on earth is the matter, child? Thora called after me from the kitchen. Nothing. I choked out, and then I went outside. I was lost in my inclination to cry in the bitter cold, so I gave Lila a hand hauling the chopped wood. In a space of minutes, she'd filled our wood box twice over. Bambley was up and looking at himself again by my third trip into the kitchen. He was laughing with Odd and Thora about something. Where's Ulfar? I said, although I didn't really care. Out back, patching up a hole in the wall, Odd said. I must speak to Christian. He should not be accommodating guests in such a hovel. It's a wonder you haven't frozen to death before now. No lodging is a hovel after you've been... Oh, sorry, this is Bam. No lodging is a hovel after you've been put up in a Swiss crypt advertised as a slice of alpine serenity, said Bambley, all charm, as he elicited another round of laughter while seated neatly sidestepping Odd's insult of our host. We sat down and had a meal of lamb stew, mussels, and a delicate pancake made from ground moss, and if Odd kept gazing toward Bambley more often than necessary, he seemed to think nothing strange about it, surprising me not one whit. Now there will be no talk of payment, Odd said to me after a flittiness coming to her voice. I stammered out my assurance on that point, and something in my voice, or perhaps my bedraggled state, seemed to soften her, and she gave my hand a squeeze. Be careful, she said, and there were several layers of meaning to it, none to which I would state to parse. Then they were all gone, leaving behind the echoes of their voices and their merriment. Bambley turned to me, puzzlement all over his face. Before he could say a word, I announced my intention to visit Poe at the spring, for I had not yet fulfilled my vow to clear the snow from his home, and in truth, there was so much on my mind that I just hurried outside with Shadow at my heels. I found myself cringing as I even read over this. Ordinarily, I do try to keep these journals professional, yet on this expedition, I find myself continually struggling to meet this standard. I blame Bambley, of course. I suppose one must expect some blurring of boundaries when one works with the folk. It skips all the way to November 12th. We went from the 31st of October to November 12th. Well, what happens in those 12 days? You can't just jump around like that. Well, that's crazy. 12th November. There are now two Hravsniks in my mind, the one that existed before Wendell's injury and the one that we found ourselves in after. We have entertained a steady trickle of visitors over the past few days, so many that I've had little time for either journaling or venturing up to Pose for a spring visit. They come with offers of food and assistance and also stories of the hidden ones. Oh, I see. Oh, I see. Yeah, Emily, listen, sit down for a sec, girlie. We need to have a chat. If you're going to be a scholar, you have to be thorough. I suppose it's because Odd pities us now, I said. They all do. We've proven ourselves inept at the basics of existence in this place. Oh, Wendell said. It has nothing to do with pity. She's forgiven you because you let her help you. She's helped you, I pointed out, because he shook his head as if I were being obtuse. Why did you offend her initially? Because I didn't ask her permission to interview the villagers? Again, he shook his head. That was part of it, but perhaps you'll refuse to allow her to treat you as a guest. If you do not admit kindness from others, you could not be surprised when they fail to offer any. I don't see what that has to do with your arm at all, I muttered, more to end the conversation than anything else, but to my surprise, he didn't persist in arguing the point. He merely gave a breath of laughter and went to fix his tea. Within a span of a single day, I learned more about the ways of the Lostlander folk than I had gleaned in the entirety of my research heretofore. In the space of 2 weeks, I may have gathered enough material for not just one chapter, but an entire book. To summarize broadly, the interactions of the mortal Lostlanders with the common fae follow the established patterns seen on the continent. Offerings are left for them, most often in the form of food, and those with wealth and status are expected to leave trinkets with mirrors and singing boxes, being especially favored. Mortals will sometimes enter into a bargain with the common fae, like my bargaining with Poe, but this is seen as dangerous given their unpredictability and the road taken only by desperate or foolhardy. None of the common fae of Lostland dwell within the households. That's a key difference. As for the courtly fae, they are wholly unique. They are above all else elusive. Few mortals have ever laid eyes on them. The villagers of Hravsnik, Thora alone makes a claim that she spied them once from a distance a very long time ago whilst playing with her schoolfellows in the woods. Their courts move within the snow, and they dwell for much of the year in the mountainous north and the interior of the country where winter never rests. They love music, and they hold elaborate balls in the wilderness, particularly upon the frozen lakes, and if you hear their song drifting on the icy wind, you must stop your ears or burst yourself into song, or you'll be drowned by it and swept insensibly into their realm, for they are also hungry. Wow. They have a particular fondness for youth in love. Those who are drawn into their dances are invariably found wandering alone the next day, alive but hollow. It's not always so. It is said that the courtly fae of Lostland were once a peaceable people, if somewhat standoffish with mortals. No one is certain when the change occurred, but this behavior has persisted for many generations. Audor is the only living victim of the courtly fae in Hravsnik, but another boy was taken last winter and 2 girls the winter before that, and 3 years ago a child of 15. Victims of these folk are continuously drawn to the winter Drawn to the winter wilderness. Not wilderness, wilderness. Wilderness? Maybe that is wilderness. Can I not read? We're just not sure. After their abduction, and they will wander into the night in their shifts or shirt sleeves when their guardians are too distracted to be found a little frozen distance from the town there later. The tall ones, it seemed, have no interest in taking them back. It seems clear that these creatures are increasingly drawn to Hravsnik, although it's unclear why. Until recently, the village had not lost anyone to their bizarre vampirism in more than 20 winters. Their stories reflect this, and it is said that many villages south and west of Lostland find the tall ones taking every generation one youth. Naturally, this youth is said to be of surpassing beauty and or talent, particularly in music, and that is a feature that will not surprise scholars, even superficially versed in folklore. And yet, here in Hravsnik, 5 have been taken in the last 4 years. I mentioned these stories, and I will turn to those now. Most unsurprisingly, most unsurprisingly, they concern encounters with the common fae. I have thus far recorded around a dozen, some fragmentary, perhaps in part of a larger saga, the others filling multiple pages, and I will summarize them here the ones that I find most intriguing, and later I will choose from them for my encyclopedia. Wow, I stumbled over all those words. Sorry about that, guys. Let's read one of them. This one is called, oh, you know what? Actually, it's 9:17. We'll save these for tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll read these stories because I'm taking her to a play date shortly, which is very fun and very exciting. So tomorrow we will read the stories that she has been collecting over the days that we missed her. What page? Great question, Susan. 112. We are on page 112. So we are officially 1/3 of the way through this book, which is very exciting. All right, I will see you all on the morrow. I hope you have a great rest of your day. See you later.